Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio.
Hello and happy Friday. I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
And I'm Holly Fry.
I feel like I almost coughed in the middle of saying that. We spent the whole week talking about Dean Mahomed.
Yeah, he's pretty interesting.
I was so fascinated. I was especially fascinated by all the parts in London and Brighton and having the first Indian restaurant and having these steam baths. I simultaneously hate how much weird quackery there is in the world that takes advantage of people. But also, boy, do I love going to a spa. Had I lived in England in, the 18th, early 19th century and also had money to do so, I can tell you I would have been in Bath. I would have been in Brighton. I would have been having all the massages and all the steam baths.
No.
And all of everything. I know this is not for you.
It stresses me out just thinking about it, which is counter to the goal.
I'm the opposite.
I'm like, think of all the things I could be doing while I'm lying here. Dear me. I could be making a dress. My brain is just like, no, don't lie
down. Something that occurred to me, very important question in my mind as I was working on that part of this episode is, do you think that Lydia Bennet went to Dean Mahomed's baths in Brighton before she ran off to elope? Sadly, the answer is probably not, because I'm pretty sure it was a year after that book came out that his first actual baths of his own opened. And I was like, bummer. I was just imagining now we're going to have to write some fan fiction about Lydia Bennet in Pride and Prejudice and her time in Brighton. Anyway.
There are two things that stand out to me in this story.
Okay.
One is the sort of strange scenario of him leaving home to be a camp follower.
Mm-hmm.
Just because in some ways that's so relatable, right? So many people that I know, including to some degree myself, leave home to start their lives and their parents feel somehow wronged by that. And it's it's just a conflicted thing that I'm like, this has been going on forever.
Yeah.
And it's strange that he articulates that conflict. It's not something that I am accustomed to seeing anybody from history talk about quite so frankly. My mom was really sad, but I was really happy. I don't, it sounds like the writing of somebody from 1983, 1996, right. Any recent thing of this sucks. I want and need this, but also I don't want to make this person miserable, but I can't live my life and not make them miserable.
Right.
That's just, again, so relatable that I was like,
Yeah. He was also, he was a child when that happened. And so part of me wonders how much of it was the childhood fantasy of running away to join the circus. And I don't really know, since he was writing all of that as an adult looking back on his childhood.
Right.
As I don't really know. Was there another thing that you had that struck you?
No, the other thing that I love about his story is just his resiliency and capability of just okay, well, I'm just going to pivot. What else can I do? What else am I good
at?
He pivoted
a lot. Yeah.
And all right. Oh, well, now I'm going to join the military now, because that seems like the next obvious step. I want to stay with my friend.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess now I'm going to become, a massage therapist of sorts. All right.
I did that exact thing. I did a whole career change to be a massage therapist at one point.
I think most of us have done multiple career changes. I know I have.
Mm-hmm.
But it is just kind of fascinating because he did so well in so many different things.
Yeah. Even the restaurant, which wasn't a financial success, it seems like people really thought it was a good restaurant.
Right.
And it was really some decades after that before Indian cuisine or sort of Indian British fusion cuisine in England really took off. It was sort of a little early for all of that when he was actually running that restaurant. Something that struck me about his travels of Dean Mahomed, when I got into it, I mean, I knew that every description I had read of it had framed it as like a travel book. But the fact that it was about his time with the army,
Mhm.
I expected there to be more army
More
stuff than there is.
military.
And there's like really not. There's just whole letters that are just devoted to like this is how the Muslims do marriage. This is how the Muslims do like how the Muslims feel about death. Like this is what this landscape looks like. This is how beautiful this city is. This is how amazing and learned and groundbreaking India was in the past, and like now we're in this place where that empire is fracturing. Like
Right.
so much of it was about all of this other stuff. There's an incredibly long passage about how to trap and train an elephant. Which, because like the Indian or elephants were a big part of sort of military units in parts of India, and just elephants in general. So interesting, so much of it, and he was clearly writing about a place that he really loved and thought was beautiful and thought was important and thought was something that the people who were visiting it should know more about before they got there.
Yeah.
But then it has this underpinning of also seeming to really support British colonial and trade efforts there, which makes it then complicated. One of the things that I've really tried to do on the show, especially in more recent years, is like just to try to draw from people's own words as much as possible. Especially when we're talking about people whose experiences and perspectives are so different from yours and mine.
Right.
And this is an example of how that can be really complicated sometimes because, yeah, you have this perspective of an Indian man living in Ireland and then England, but like also supporting a colonial effort that a lot of other people were resisting. And that just makes it complicated.
Yeah, it's also one of those things I always have that moment of, I don't know if cringiness is the right word. It's kind of too of the day. But like it's that thing where you always go, "Oh, I just know this got used
Mm-hmm.
against people in India by saying like, "No, your fellow countryman thinks we're great." And it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh."
I don't know if it really got, because there were 450 copies printed. As far as I know, that was the only print run. So it's not like this was a giant runaway
Right.
bestseller. So it's like I don't know how much attention it got beyond affluent people in England, Ireland, Scotland, like places in that immediate area. Like,
Right, but then aren't those exactly the people that would have power?
yeah, then those are the people, like he's specifically writing it for those same folks who might be going to India for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's a little tricky.
I found him so fascinating though, and so many things, like so many firsts, and also so much just Brighton wellness time.
Right?
Um, so yeah.
Also too many Janes.
Yeah, or possibly only one. It's weird.
Well, it's interesting because I hadn't really thought about it while I was reading this over initially, but when we were recording, when we start to list the births of his children,
Oh, right.
they come so far after most of them come so far after when he and Jane number 1 or possibly only got married,
Mhm.
that to me seems like a clue that there might have been a second Jane.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think as I understand it, the references that suggest there's a second Jane are like later obituaries of some of their descendants.
Mm-hmm.
And obituaries are tricky to take as accurate sources for a number of reasons.
Yes.
Um But as I understand it, it's like there's not a clear answer one way or the other. And I don't know whether they had other children earlier in the marriage that didn't
Oh, right.
survive. So yeah, it's just a lot that's really unclear there.
So many Janes. So many Janes.
Yeah. So yeah, I am glad I got to spend so much time reading about Indian food and spas. I don't know what else to say about that.
Just marvelous.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
Yeah. So happy Friday, everybody. Whatever's happening over the weekend. Hope it's great. We will be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow. We will be back with a brand new episode on Monday. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.